Okay, well, I have now had my 2511 in use for about a quarter of a year, a little bit longer. Um, so wanted to kind of update where I'm at. I'm about to do a handful of things, which I guess I'm calling my V2 round. But my quarter year with this guy in his V.1 trim, version 1 trim, has been incredibly impressive. In fact, so impressive that his big brother, the 355, which was previously, I mean, it's always been my favorite saw, even if I used my old 25cc Climbsaw more frequently, the 355 was always my favorite saw. No more. No, the 2511 is just the best Climbsaw ever made. Actually, in fact, it holds a couple other pretty noteworthy things. One is the best horsepower per pound, like the best power per pound of any Climbsaw. And the fact that it can do that at 25 cc's is incredibly impressive. I mean, this thing has a higher power to weight ratio than the 355 or the 201 or 200 T's from Steel, which are actually identical. 2 horsepower, 2.1 horsepower, and 8 pounds, identical to the 355's power to weight. This guy, the 2511, at just 25 cc's, smokes them both. It's nearly nearly 10% stronger, higher power per pound. So, at any rate, it's also got another pretty big thing to boast, which is far more important, very important to climbers. It's 5.2 pounds. It's the lightest Climbsaw available. Actually, the lightest Climbsaw available in North America. Yeah, I guess there's smaller displacement models in other countries, etc. Anyways, so those figures are off the shelf. Those are off the shelf, and obviously a 200 or a 355 can be boosted up a lot. But if anyone who knows the first thing about 2511s knows just how insanely they respond. So, for starters, there's really, I mean, porting them, awesome. If you have the patience, I mean, don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoy porting engines and all, but you with this you have to go through the crankcase to get to the cylinder. So yeah, no thanks. Not interested in tearing apart these super tiny, super tight, high precision Japanese saws. I never ported my 355 either. They're both incredibly strong saws. That said, the mirror opening of the exhaust exits, the muffler rather, silencer's exit hole, it adds nearly 20%, over 15% horsepower and torque. The figures for that are online. The Duke sells, he basically buys OEM mufflers and just opens them up a bit and puts a fancy deflector on, and I mean, they look great and all, but you can achieve similar or even better yourself. The way that I approached it, I expanded the exit from the silencer muffler on mine over here. I would have liked it to be more over here. However, I needed it to be here so I could get access to the central baffle. Even in the non-catalytic mufflers like this one, there's still a baffle wall that runs most of the way. No, the entire way. I'm sorry, the entire way. But it has 3 passage holes over here on the left-hand side. I enlarged mine by about 1/3, and the only way that I could realistically access them was by making my exit hole here. So, working backwards, the charge would be exiting here. This is sized at about 55% of the exhaust flange. Do not go too big. You don't when you go past the optimum on your size here, power drops off radically. When you're approaching the optimum, you're not gaining a ton of power by going from 80% to 85%. I mean, consider just how powerful it is when it has an exhaust, a muffler opening that's what, a tenth of an inch, maybe a tenth of a square inch, max. You know, so, and plus, if you've actually removed the muffler, which you should to do a proper muffler job, you know how small the exhaust port on this thing is. So, anyways, yeah, we're at about 55-ish% of exhaust flange here. 1/3 opening in the baffles because I didn't want any real restriction. I just want them to still be active so that the charge has to go all the way to this side of the muffler, because it enters the muffler over here on the bottom right corner at that little bulge dead center between those two mounting screws. That's where it's coming out of the exhaust flange and into the rear of the muffler, and then across the back through the holes, and then across the front out the OEM exit, or out earlier on mine. At any rate, that area right there where it meets up, you have a heat shield and a gasket. You have to retain both of those because otherwise your third bolt for mounting up your muffler to the block will not fit properly, and your exhaust flange will not seal to the back of the muffler properly. But as long as you're careful, you can totally reuse that muffler gasket, and you can totally port match, which you have to. You can totally port match your expanded, ported, flared, whatever you want to call it, exhaust port and muffler entry. Obviously, if you don't port match those, then you're choking off any work that you did, negating it. Also, if you're not planning on removing the cylinder entirely, then do not attempt porting and flaring the flange like I did, unless you are positive that you know how to work with that kind of thing and protect the inside of that cylinder. It's not something I'm interested in explaining or competent to explain. If you don't have the experience for it, don't attempt it. It's incredibly dangerous. That said, if you are competent to do it, you can get about 25, almost 25% more throughput or flow or surface area, whatever you want to call it, at that intersection or that portal that's in between the end of the exhaust port, which is a long straight tube on this cylinder, and its sharp right 90-degree entry into the rear of the muffler. So we're talking a sharp 90-degree twist that's normally not only a sharp bend, which is killing gas, the flow of the charge, the spent charge moving out, but it's also a choke point. You can enlarge that by nearly 25% surface area, which is incredible as far as throughput goes, but it also rids you of the sharp, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're still talking about what ultimately amounts to a 90-degree bend in a half-inch area, but you're smoothing it out. And when you're doing this, your limiting factors are going to be effectively the inner meat of the muffler's intake, the spot where the muffler meets up to the exhaust flange, at its corners where it has its bolts. Those seem to be the two tight corners where you don't really want to, like, where when you're porting it out and out and out, and you know you're going slow, you're going smooth, you hit a point where you don't want to go further, or you're afraid it's going to affect the welding or the brazing or whatever. At any rate, doing that does a lot more than simply opening up your exhaust's final exit. So, moving along, these things are already strong enough. You do that, you jump it up, 20%. The ignition is advanced 4.25 degrees. That's all I did for power mods or engine mods, and this thing screams. I'm sorry, this thing thumps. It is strong as heck. I mean, it is a strong saw, yet it's not annoyingly loud. It is incredible with fuel. This is my custom sheath for it. I climb with sheaths. I have a little mini scrunch for it. Yeah, the rest of what I did to it is just body mods. 3-point dogs. Obviously, I dyed the body using RIT dye, like I do on all of my Echoes. that black dust OEM Echo dust shield. It's a Snap-on. Echo offers them for some of their Climbsaws. They're good if you do a lot of messy stuff, which I didn't bother cleaning my saws up, so you can tell that I do. So I like keeping them on. I put felling sights, both vertical and horizontal felling sights on it after hearing August Hunicke mentioning how he would like them in his video. So I figured I'll put them on mine. I swapped down to a 12-inch bar from the 14-inch OEM, which hopefully I can get like $10 for it, because I hate Echo bar and chain setups. I put a big 660 grip on it so that I could always, you know, no problem with that. I carved slots into it so that I could still open my caps with my starter rope, which is neat. I always wrap my handles with grip tape, and it really does make a difference on Climbsaws, in my opinion. However, I didn't do that on this saw because, at least with the pretty regular sized Edelrid brand harness saw holster, I guess you'd call it, if you don't have one of these, you don't need to buy an expensive one like Rock Exotica. You can get, I think I spent $10 on that this Edelrid one. The reason I don't put grip tape on is because I don't always, I mean, I want to rack my saw using the beaner that's connected directly to the saw's strop thing. But sometimes you want to just rack your saw really quick, you know. This lets you throw your saw into your thing. It's really cool, and you know, it's fine, it's safe, it's good. I don't keep my my lanyard on at all times because, sadly, the build quality of the air filter box is such that I found multiple times where the seams were mated up perfect, but closing that still made it snap in more than it should. So I like to keep that closed so it keeps its integrity there. I also noticed the handle was pretty chintzy. The build doesn't feel nearly as solid, not even remotely as solid as the 355. Although the bigger caps are so appreciated. It's also missing the palm grip, which is really incredible for when you're one-handing, especially using the top of the bar for obvious reasons, or generating rightwards force. So anyways, I took a piece of, I cut a chunk of, it was a bicycle handle grip. I cut a chunk off, used electrical tape, and mounted up my own palm grip. I thought I would have to redo it over and over, but it's been over 3 months and it's still holding strong. I textured the bottom of the throttle trigger because it annoys me to no end that they always send out every saw with these slick triggers. I don't know why they can't put any texture on them at all, but it's just leve. I'd be interested if everyone's is like this. I mean, I bought this guy new pretty recently, like late 2021. Very, actually no, it was, yeah. So, anyways, it's the newest iteration of this saw, I have to imagine. Like, for instance, it was built in, I took most of my tags off. I only saved my VIN number. As you can see, I don't like stickers or stuff like that on my saw. At any rate, it's one of the newest iterations, and it still has this problem where the spark plug cover, if you open and close that guy, it chafes pretty significantly. It chafes against the boot of the spark plug. So you got to take your grinder and just kind of, you know, hog out the inner upper of this compartment so that it can open and close, you know, so you can take one finger and open and close it properly. I am going to be opening up the airbox on this guy in round 2, because the way that it normally gets air is pretty limited. It's trying to suck air in through the holes at the carburetor, the limiter holes, which are unfiltered, and pull that in, and effectively, I didn't check if there's any behind the carb. Sometimes there's screened ones behind the carb that pull in a little bit more. But on Echoes, they all have that G-force set up. And if you take a look between your flywheel cover and the debris shield behind it, like the inner one that protects the flywheel fins, you'll see that there's actually a tight passage from that opens right here and goes all the way and connects to that little tube. That passage, think about those flywheel fins whipping around. That's suction. If you watch the YouTube video on how G-force pre-cleaning works, you'll see how the airflow patterns are. It's under suction. You're not getting pressure or pressurized air jammed into that airbox. You have air being pulled from that airbox. So you want to have an air opening over here so that the suction, which is at the end of this piece of plastic, this piece of body right here, extends in, and at the end of it, it's a little tiny little passage, which is the suction passage. You'd want to have your opening here so it's whipping air across the filter. And as far as filters go, like I said, the way that I'm keeping this clipped on, maybe it's because I put grease on the back, marine grease on the back of my filter, but I have not had one piece of fine debris or any debris whatsoever get past my air filter, not once. I'm also still blown away at how clean my air filter is. I mean, again, like I said, I block my air, the air passage that is the carb adjustment slot. Usually I use a chunk of rubber, and then it's something that seals up nice and tight, and I just haven't made one for this yet. Seeing it how it is, it does the job. Sometimes tape just does the job. So anyways, yeah, I wouldn't change. There's almost nothing I would change on this, except for that palm grip, which is easily remedied. And then beyond that, boom. That is the most annoying thing in the world, having to toggle your on and off switch. At least on the 355, it's more of a steel type, multi-point operator control. You choke, fast idle on the way back to the on position, and then off. And when you go to off, well, it's not a spring, although it's not a spring. I was gonna say it does have some assistance, but it doesn't. It's not a spring, but you don't have to actually put it into the off position. You can kind of be in the on position and just kind of lean into off, and that kills the saw, and it's still in the on position. So yeah, V2 is going to have some swap to this. Probably, the way I'm thinking of it is that if I'm already going to be modifying, or if I'm already going to open up this area, I'd sooner just get a simple button, like a push button that's either in the on or off state. Or actually, that's probably more wiring than necessary. No, I would want to just get a breaker switch so that I can have the wires in the run through it in the always on position, and have that little spring button be nothing more than a breaker or a killer, because all you need to do is hit the brake for a second so that the spark plug doesn't fire, and now the engine's off, and then you release it and the connection is remade, but the engine doesn't keep running. I mean, I guess if you give it the quickest tap, that's probably why they like the solid firm off. Anyways, I'm yapping. That's enough on my V.1 2511T. My baby. Like I said, I have not been using my 355 at all. I'm using the 2511 right up to the point where I'm swapping to the 590, which is quite beat up. It had to fight a rather large oak a few days ago. It did awesome. It won, but it's bar tensioner, it's recoil spring, the starter rope, although I replaced that with the Elasto Start clone that I had. I just didn't tighten it because I was racing back to the job site. Anyways, he's about to get all tuned up. So anyways, that's the Echo Steed for now. Make this 355 better. The 2511 will be sick with version 2, and I'll be back with that